Welcome to Guided by Third Wheel, the podcast. My name is Amber Ireland, and I'm here with my co-host, Jill Bucaro. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast, Guided by Third Wheel. Amber and I decided that today we wanted to talk a little bit about leadership. So leadership is a big part of what we do for our consulting business. We help develop leaders, recruit leaders, help develop programs. I do a lot of supervision with either social work leaders or emerging leaders in the field. So we're like, I think we should talk a little bit about leadership on the podcast. And obviously there's like a million different ways we could go. There are whole podcasts devoted to leadership topics. But we thought what would make sense today is to maybe just share a little bit about our own journeys as leaders. Some of the things, that we're proud of in our leadership journey, some of the things that we messed up at and learned from along the way. So that is what we're going to do today.
Yeah.
So Amber, what do you feel like is your biggest leadership lesson?
My biggest leadership lesson, people are not robots.
Okay, say more.
When you become a leader, you kind of lead the way that you were led, right? Because that's the only thing you have to model after. There's not a lot of training when you become a leader, right? And somebody's coming to you and they're saying, here's this team of people, make them perform.
Yes, we need them to do X, Y, and Z, and it's your job to make sure they do it.
And if you don't do it, then you are clearly a terrible leader and you're not doing your job, right? So that's kind of like what's handed to you as your job. And in that, you start to be like, okay, well, I gave you these tasks to do, why aren't you doing them? And you just expect people to show up to work, and that old, I don't know if people are still saying this, I hope that they're not, but leave your personal life at the door when you come in, right? There was this old mindset around we don't bring our feelings to work,
right.
Show up in your most robotic state, please. And I think when I first started supervising, that was my expectation. It was my expectation that you're going to show up and you're going to leave everything else at the door, and you are here to do this work because we are paying you to do it. Just very rigid thinking. But I think through really getting to know my team, watching how, worked for some people. Some people that's how they prefer to come to work.
Right. They kind of have their home selves and their work selves, and they show up and they're here to do the job.
Right.
I agree. I agree that there's some people like that. But I think more people, especially more people now, when you think about, I think younger generations, millennials and Gen Zs in particular, are more interested in that integration, right? And we talk about this too. We want to be able to be our whole selves,
right,
wherever we are. But I also think as a leader, you have to foster a work environment that allows people to be their whole selves.
Yeah, and it's safe for them to do that. And I can hear it in the back of my head, people who are supervisors going well, if you let everybody just come and do whatever the hell they want,
right,
nothing's going to get done. And you do have to, set boundaries, and you have to set expectations, and you have to hold people accountable for those expectations. It doesn't mean that you don't do those things. It just means that I'm going to look at you as a human instead of, this robotic being that gets paid to come here and do this job. And I really don't give a shit what happens outside of this space. I think that's kind of the biggest thing. And that's something that I carry with me all the time whenever I am either helping emerging leaders or leading my own team, is just remembering that we have to remember the humanness in the teams that we lead.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a biggie for me. I am very much a person, I'm a very task-oriented person. I'm also a very, kind of introverted person, and someone who I do think kind of tends to keep walls up or to leave my, true self at home, right? And I show up to grind and to do my thing. But that was a huge learning curve for me, as well as recognizing that there are people that are different, right? Truly the last thing I want people to do at work is to come in my office and ask me how my personal life is. I hate that. I literally am I don't want to share that with you. Like, there are very few people I even want to share that with at all. And that I don't like. But I think, the immaturity piece of me, it took me a long time, probably longer than it should have, to realize that there are people who are different than me, right? And actually, the vast majority of people, in my experience, that have worked for me do want me to care, about what's going on in their personal lives and to ask about it and to be aware of it and things like that. And that was a big learning curve for me as well, and a big lesson.
Yeah. I think too, with the personal life thing, it can't become the focus of work, right? Like, it can't become like we spend all day talking about somebody's breakup or whatever. Like, we're processing all of that. When it becomes that, like, we've gone a little too far in allowing, or, I don't even want to say honoring, but just like recognizing that people have things going on outside of work as well. And I think in those moments when, that's happening, I've had employees like that before where, something major happens and they come to work and then you realize like, oh my God, all day I just spent going back and forth with you, kind of like in a more of a therapy sense. It's at those times that I'm saying like, hey, I see you and I see the stress. Maybe you need to take a day off in order to, kind of figure this out, create whatever structure and support you need outside of work. Not because I don't want to be here for you, but mostly because like when we're here at work, we have things that we need to get done. So if you're not able to do that today, please take time off for yourself to take care of yourself.
Right.
And doing that in a compassionate way, right? Because there's one way of being like, it looks like you can't work today, so why don't you just go the fuck home, right?
Right.
Or saying like, man, I really hear you're struggling. Is there a way that you could take some time off this week and really, spend it trying to figure this out? Would that, help you and make you feel better?
Yeah. I think that is a big piece of it. And I think like the part of that kind of feels like another lesson for me is like I am a perfectionist, right? And I like work to be done well, and I like it to be timely, and I like things to be like buttoned up and tight and like a well-oiled machine. And I think that I, for a long time, had impossible standards because I was so attached to like the outcome, right? Or like the work product. And then I think I've gotten a lot better in the last couple of years of being like, we are all just humans here trying to help other humans. I think this can be especially messy in like the social service or the social work field, right? Where you have like human beings who are helping other humans who are like really, really struggling, right? And I think when I finally truly believed, as long as we all show up and like we do our best, right? And we like think creatively and do what we can, that is the like outcome I need to be attached to, right? I don't need to be attached to what I think a good resolution for a client case would look like, because I think then I'm holding people accountable and then I'm not leaving space, for people to be human.
Right.
We had a thing, or this fall with my team, my social work team lead was on maternity leave. My grandma was actively dying in hospice. One of my social workers, like, she was having like a major issue, like with her pet, was like really sick, and we thought she was going to have to like put her down. And then I had another social worker that had like a major like kind of crisis health concern come up, and it was just crazy, right? I mean, it was just absolutely, and I think that was like a really good situation that like made me like surrender, right? Like we are all of our 100% that we can give today is really more like 50% on most of the days. But as long as we're showing up and we're doing what we can, I mean, it is what it is. And I think had all of that calamity struck in that small amount of time, the way it did for me this fall, if that would have happened 3 or 4 years ago, I think I would have totally lost it, because I would have been so obsessed with like, referrals aren't getting out fast enough, client cases aren't getting closed quick enough, our memos don't look as good as they could, right? You know what I mean? Like I would have been so tied to the output, as opposed to being like, we are all good people, caring people, dedicated people, and let me, protect us to do the work that we can do right now. And that, I think, is such a big learning. But now it's like, I don't have to be like as anxious and as fucking like striving, like grinding all the time, you know? So that's been a nice lesson as well. And I think it kind of ties into that humanity piece.
Right.
Because people are not going to be able to give the same work product every single day of every single week just because they have their own shit going on, or they're going to get sick, or like something's going to happen. So that was a big one.
And I like, you know, the only way that you know that those things are happening with your team is because you create a safe space for them to be able to share that with you, right? I've worked in workplaces where there was no safe space to share that. And like, even if you were someone who wanted to be like, you know, this is going on in my personal life, like 0 people wanted to hear it.
Yeah.
And if you did share it, it almost became a detriment because it was like, well, you've got too many things going on. So clearly you're not dedicated to work. And then there was this mindset that like, regardless of what's happening in my personal life, I have to show up here and perform.
Right.
Or I'm going to lose this job. I'm never going to get a promotion. I'm never.
Yep.
And I hate that. I hate that type of culture because first off, you're creating more leaders that do that, right?
Yeah.
It's not sustainable. And what you're doing is you're creating people who don't take care of themselves and don't view the need for other people to take care of themselves as a priority. And then you have a bunch of sick people that work together. You have a bunch of angry people. You have a bunch of anxious people. And then now you've got this office or, you know, workplace culture that, you know, everybody is coming to work. Nobody is happy. People are pit. You know, it's just, you know, they're pitting against each other and it's just, and I think it starts, some of that starts with leadership and how we foster those safe spaces at work to be able to be like, hey, you know, I'm over here having a human moment and let me tell you what's going on so that maybe, you know, you can show some compassion to me, or if I need time off or whatever. I remember working somewhere that like, I love the fact that I don't love the fact that one of your team was having health problems with their pet, but that would not have flown. Like, if I would have gone to work and been like, my dog is really sick and we think we're going to have to put the dog down, they would have looked at me like I had 3 heads. Like, go put your dog down and get your ass back into work.
Wow.
Like, what in the world are you even thinking? That is a dog. You know?
Right.
And I think some people could do that, right? Some people, that is, you know, it's like, that's how they're wired. But I mean, you have to know the people that work for you.
Right. And how important.
That where does that fall in your life? Like, what level of importance do you give to that? It's the same thing about like family members. I work somewhere that like, you know, if your like great uncle died, they'd be like, we don't do bereavement leave for somebody that's that far, you know, that's
they
far
only do like
removed.
the immediate family bereavement leave,
right? But like, what if my great uncle was the person who took care of me most of my life, or what? You know what I mean? And it's things like that really building that relationship with your team and kind of knowing those things helps for you to be a more compassionate leader and to make sure that they're being taken care of. Because at the end of the day, when they're able to take time, when they're stressed, when they're able to manage their own external things well, they will perform better at work.
Sure, absolutely.
And they'll want to work for you.
Mm-hmm. They'll want to stay.
Right.
I think one of the biggest things that certainly agencies and companies within the treatment, social service, social work field are struggling with right now is retention and turnover. They can't fill positions. They can't get people to come work for them, no matter how much money they're paying. And I think that is also happening in other sectors. We know that. But I know for me, like, I've never struggled with that, you know, and I don't have people leave. And I think it's because, you know, and let me say, I don't have people leave now, right? Like when it's not like I like started being a leader and was like fucking phenomenal at it. Like I had plenty of people, like the first couple teams I supervised were probably like, this girl is an absolute inconsistent, over emotional maniac.
Well, and also, I just want to say this real quick. I think sometimes what happens is you become a leader and like you get promoted or whatever, and people leave off of the team. Right.
Oh,
And
like right away.
sometimes that's, that's their own stuff or whatever. But like people will tell you like, "Oh, well that's just what happens." And I'm sorry. I mean, as I have progressed in my leadership skills and my ability to supportively supervise people, that happens less and less. If I get promoted, like people aren't running from me.
No. People are usually like excited when they find out I'm their boss.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe people are listening to this, they're like, she's delusional. But no, I'm with you. I don't have people leave. And I think, and I did because I wasn't good at it yet.
I did too.
And I think now though, but I think the other thing we have to talk about is like there is this balance. Like you have to see people as humans. You have to recognize them as humans. I have some good tips and tricks. I don't know if now's the right time to share those. We can save it till the end too. For like, if you are like me and you are not somebody who likes to be extroverted and chit chat and like talk about shit that feels inconsequential to you or whatever, I have really like developed some tips and tricks where I can still find ways to authentically, right, connect with the people that work for me and make sure they feel heard and make sure they feel seen as human beings. And, and if that's not something that comes naturally to you, that's something you have to develop and like schedule time for. Like I literally schedule time in my calendar because I am like a slave to my calendar where I say I'm going to go walk around the office and check in with people.
Yeah.
And I don't want to. I'll be honest, like this is like real talk. Like I don't want to do it. Like I would be much more comfortable sitting at my desk, doing actual work, right? Like being alone. Like that would be a more comfortable space for me than like getting up and like making the rounds and checking in with people. But I know that I have to do it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so important that people have face-to-face time with me, that they have space to be heard. So that's one thing. Another like tip and trick I will share is my birthday tip. Have I told you my birthday tip yet? So I think I have like 18 people that I either like directly supervise or that like report to me for like big kind of projects or service lines, right? And so what I do at the beginning of every year is I ask our HR person to print out everybody's birthday for me. Like I give her the list of all my people and I say, print out the birthday list for me. And she prints out the birthday list and I go through and I put everybody's birthday on my calendar. And then I go on Amazon and I buy a big box of birthday cards, like, like cutesy little birthday cards. And then I go to Ghostlight, which is a local coffee shop here, and I buy $180 worth of $10 gift cards. And you could do like $5, right? I mean, you could literally do this with like a flippin' Snickers bar if you wanted to. And I keep the gift cards in my desk and I keep the cards in my desk. And on the day when it is the person's birthday, I like take out a gift card. I take out the card. I write like a personalized note and I give the person a card. And I just like did this because I was like, oh, this might be fun. And I am telling you, they love it. People love it because it's individualized, right? I was really big. I'm a gift giver. That's one of my love languages. Like, and I would always do stuff at Christmas and I do like, like silly cookies for like Easter, like Halloween bags, right? And they like liked that, but they love the birthday so much more because it's personal. Because it's like I remembered their birthday and took the time to handwrite a card and put, and I try to write something like unique and because I have a different relationship with each of them in there. And it takes me literally 3.5 minutes. Like it is no time, no energy. So hot tip for everyone here. I started birthdays last year and it has improved my relationship with my team probably more than anything I've ever done.
I'm going to have, cover your ears if you're on my team. But I did that. I used to do that a really long time ago. And I think I just got out of the habit of doing it. I don't know why. I think I had more things on my plate and I kind of forgot about it.
And you forget about it. And I think
and I love a birthday.
You do like birthdays. And, and I've done like retreats and fucking, where we all like kumbaya in a circle and like say things we love about each other. And I mean, I have orchestrated all of these like wild ass things, right? To like try to build good relationships with my team. And this is the best, highest reward thing I have ever done. And I think, and for those people who aren't leaders, like, that you don't necessarily have a team that you need to remember their birthdays, I'm getting better in my personal life too. Everybody's going to be like, Jill is the most insincere person, but I am getting better in my personal life. Like I have another stack of like birthday cards, baby shower cards, wedding cards.
Yeah.
And like when you plan that out ahead of time or you keep like certain gift cards on hand, you don't miss stuff, you know, because if it like comes, because, you know, we're all busy, right? And sometimes I'm like, oh shit, it's so-and-so's birthday. But if I have those supplies on hand, I'm able to recover quickly. So I don't know, just a little hot take on something that has been really good for me. To, I think, help my people feel seen. Because I think I do see them, right? And I recognize them and I know them probably better than they think I do, but I am not always the best at like expressing that and sharing that and showing that. But I think the other thing that we need to talk about, so I say all that to say, I think you have to see people as people. You have to recognize them as their whole selves. Yes. And I also think like the yin to that yang is you have to think about accountability and consistent accountability and check-in and hard conversations, because that is the other thing that I really fucked up when I became a leader is I thought, again, I'm viewing everyone through the lens of myself, right? And I'm like, I want flexible hours. I want to be left alone. I want to be able to creatively do my work. So I'm like, hear ye. We are all adults. We all have flexible hours. We can all do our work the way we want to do it, right? And then everything, as you can imagine, as you're smirking at me now, as you know, everything fell apart quickly. So I think we have to talk about that consistent accountability.
Yeah.
And I think you're good at that. You're kind of the one who taught me how to do it as well.
Well, and I think, first off, you can't have accountability with anyone that you are supervising or managing if you're not meeting with them on a regular basis. That's really the first thing. Like, you've got to make sure that you have regularly scheduled time with them. And I would say, you know, I prefer to meet with the people that I'm directly supervising every single week. Some people have larger teams, and so that's not, you know, it's not feasible. Or like, I know that when I've been in like director level positions where I'm supervising managers, sometimes it's better to do like every other week type of thing, because they just, you know, they have more decision making power.
Sure.
And so it's like, I don't need to be there to like every week talk about what you're doing and make sure that, you know, you have all the support you need and you have all of the like thumbs up to move forward. Right. So I would say that is really the first thing, is that you have to be meeting with people on a regular basis in order to hold them accountable. Something that I tell my team and the people that I supervise, especially when I'm newly supervising someone, because we also have to remember that when people come to you, they've probably had other supervisors in the past.
Sure.
And they've had different feelings about those relationships, the way that they were supervised. I don't know. I feel like the universe sends me people who have just had terrible experiences with supervisors. And they will tell me that, you know. And so the thing that I like to remind them is you will always know where you stand with me. Like, because if something is wrong, I am going to come to you as immediately as I can. Like, I am not going to keep a list of all of like a naughty list for you and wait 6 months until we're doing a performance review and then dump those all on your plate.
Yes.
I will tell you what's going on, and I will let you know what I expect you to do to fix it. Or we will work together to figure out how you're going to fix it. But I am never going to, like, I'm going to be transparent with you.
Yes.
You know, and be honest.
And I think you have to create spaces for that consistently to happen. And I think that goes back to what you said about the regularly scheduled check-ins. Because I think some people think like, oh, what Amber's saying is like, I just need to make sure I check in with everybody every week. Like, no. We're talking scheduled time.
Yes.
So that you know that it's coming, the person knows that it's coming, and they can save whatever questions or concerns that are not immediate for you for that time. And they know that during this meeting, Amber is going to give me critical feedback
Yeah.
on what I've been up to, as opposed to like, I'm working and Amber fucking does a drive by my office.
Yes.
And is like, yo, what you did 2 days ago, like that sucked, do it better this time, right? Like, because that is anxiety provoking.
Right.
Because like, I think that whenever I'm sitting here in my office, somebody could roll in hot to me and start telling me either good stuff or bad stuff, right? So I think not only do you have to meet with people on a consistent basis, that has to be scheduled time. And I know that's like a small nuance, but I think it's a really important one.
For sure. And it needs to be too. This is another thing that I don't like to do unless it's like, and sometimes it's absolutely necessary, but I don't like to blindside people. So if something has happened, you know, if I get word that like somebody is doing some like outrageous shit, right? I'm going to meet with you right away, but I'm going to tell you exactly what we're meeting about before we meet.
Yes.
You know, I'm not going to just pop in and be like, hey, I need to meet with you right now.
Right.
Because that scares the shit out of people.
Yes.
You know, and that's not what I'm out to do, because I've noticed that if I schedule a meeting, even if I know it's going to be hard, even if the person knows it's going to be a hard meeting, when they show up, they are more ready to have a conversation and to work on solutions, right? If I blindside you and tell you, like, I'm going to meet with you in an hour, and you're like, what is even happening right now? Now, when somebody comes in, they're coming in on the defense.
Right.
And they're not willing to be open and honest with me. And they're not willing to, you know, find solutions. They're like, it's like self-preservation.
Well, they're just like, I mean, you've literally triggered their like cortisol response. You've triggered their fight, flight, or freeze response. And I can think about like, and some of the good leadership things I do are based on like bad leadership that I experienced, right? Because I can think of a time, kind of what you were saying before, where this was back in the day when I worked at Victoria's Secret. I was a manager there, and I thought things were great. I had never heard one bit of negative feedback. I had never heard like, hey, Jill, do this instead of that. Hey, Jill, these are like some complaints we're getting, you know what I mean, from your team. I mean, I just was like literally dancing through a field of daisies. I mean, I was like 23 and an idiot, but like overall, like, you know, I was like, I think I'm doing a pretty good job, because nobody had ever told me otherwise. And then I go to my yearly performance review, which I'm expecting will be good, because I've only ever heard truly how good I'm doing. And I go, and it was like you said, there was like the naughty list. There was this whole list of things that are like, people don't like when you do this. Like, you could be better at doing this. Like, you know what I mean? Just like some really things that I think, were good feedback, right? Like, definitely needed to work on as a leader.
Right.
But like, I had never heard any of that. And then you know, and then I think you feel some embarrassment, some shame, like how long have people been saying this and nobody said something to me, and you're just totally blindsided. And I think, again, like, you know, I've had bosses where sometimes it's like literally inconsequential, or sometimes it's really serious. They'll like send you a text like, hey, swing by my office when you get a chance. And you're just like, what is going on? You know, am I in trouble? Is somebody getting fired? Like, what's going on? So I think we've probably all experienced that. And sometimes it requires like more planning, more work, more shuffling and rescheduling on our end as the leader or the supervisor. But I think it's totally worth it.
Yeah. And I've had employees too, like when I was not so good at like letting people know why we were meeting, and I was, you know, kind of creating a sense of fear and anxiety. I've had employees say to me, what is this in regards to?
Yeah.
I think, you know, if you are not a leader, or the person that supervises you is someone who does this on a fairly regular basis, I think it's a fair question to ask.
Yes.
And that's a way to, you know, I always call it like, you know, you lead the team that you know, are charged to lead within your organization or wherever. And then you also sometimes are supervising up.
You absolutely have to think about, how you're leading and modeling for up the chain.
Right. Because, you know, if you don't like the way that your supervisor is interacting with you, there are ways for you to, you know, be asked the questions and like put the same thing that you would do with your own employees to try to like spark like, hey, maybe we should be doing this before you like say like do this, right?
Yes.
you can do with your own supervisor. And so if they're coming to you and they're, scheduling these last minute meetings that are anxiety provoking, saying to them, hey, what's the agenda for this meeting? Can you share the agenda for this meeting, or just give me an overview so I can be prepared, right? And the more times you do that, you're going to train that person to just do that, to tell you that on the front end, rather than creating an anxiety provoking meeting.
Yes.
You
Yeah,
so
you're just kind of modeling that. And I think, I don't know, one thing that I've learned is I feel like we have to get good at like modeling some of that vulnerability and that humanness like in our organizations, right? Like to be able to say things like, and to even say to your boss like, hey, can you tell me what this is in regards to? Like, it just made me a little anxious that this meeting came out of the blue, right? I think that that's one thing I really try to do, is just to be transparent about that when I am feeling like vulnerable or overwhelmed or frustrated. And, I think that goes into like apologizing too. One thing that I'm really bad at is that when I'm stressed and overwhelmed and people come and they interrupt me in my office, which when you supervise 1,000 people, you get interrupted in your office every 5 seconds, right? Which makes it all the more irritating. But I can be really bad about like giving people the crazy eyes when they come in my office, or like being real short with them, right? Or like just making it very clear that I am irritated with the interruption. And I think I try not to do it with people who report to me, but I certainly do it with colleagues, right? That do not. And I've tried to be better at like, like swallowing my pride and like going back around and being like, hey, I'm sorry. If I seem short or distracted when you came in, I'm just really overwhelmed about X, Y, and Z. And I'll just say like in my personality, like I am not good at quickly derailing from one task and going to another. Like it's just a hard transition for me as a human. And I think that people and we've talked about this in other podcasts, is that there are just so many people in this world are just unwilling to admit fault. Or, they're afraid it's going to make them, like vulnerable or, whatever. And it's just like, that is one thing I try to do all the time as a leader, because we are all going to snap at our coworkers. We are all going to be short with a client. Like we are all going to like talk shit about somebody when we shouldn't be talking shit about them. Right. And if I can model to them, like I fucked up. Right? Like I did not handle this like as professionally, as kindly as I could have. Right. And here's what I am sorry for, and here's what I'll try to do different next time. I think, again, you're creating space for everybody to do that as well. Because there's not one office where people aren't going to ever be ugly to each other. Right. Especially when you work in high stress situations. Right. So I think we have to, as leaders, model that as well. And I think when I first started, I was so scared of exactly all those things I said, of people thinking I was incompetent, of it, if I admitted a fault, that people would be like, she doesn't know what the hell she's doing. Like, she doesn't have the temperament for this. She doesn't have the skills for this. That I think I just, I would double down, right? And make it worse. And I think, again, you talked about letting people be human. And I think one of the biggest ways we do that is just like being human ourselves. Right. Right. And I love that you brought up apologizing, and being authentic about what you're apologizing about, of course. But I think that's a big thing for leaders to recognize, that like, you're not going to always do everything correctly the first time around. And in order for you to model good behavior, and B, to start to learn that growth for yourself, you have to apologize. You can't just be like, oh, I fucked that up, just let it go, and then I'll just do different next time. Like, you have to actually say out loud, like, I did this. Because internally, you're not going to change that pattern unless you somehow externally create accountability. Absolutely. And your team is never going, like, they're just going to see that. If you never apologize, then they just think that's acceptable behavior, or that's the way that you're going to behave. And then you create these spaces that maybe aren't as safe and compassionate as you would like them to be. And I know for myself, like, when you were talking about apologizing, I'm going to have to apologize next week with my team over some things that, like, I was doing, purposely not bringing up a topic on a regular basis during a meeting. I didn't want to influence the way that they were seeing it, that they were seeing the situation, right? And so I knew what I was doing, but I thought I was doing it for the, health of the team. And come to find out,
I needed to bring it up so that they had the space to talk about it.
Yeah.
And as soon as that was brought to my attention, I'm like, okay, let me make sure that I create that space, and B, that I apologize for not creating that space sooner.
Yes. No, absolutely. And I think that ties into like just another piece, like there's just that honesty piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
And like one, like being honest about when you fuck up, being honest about how you're feeling. And I think being able to like honestly name what is going on around you, and I've talked about this on here that for so long, like my go-to mode of life was like manipulation, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's like, how can, I'm not going to tell them this. I'm going to tell them this instead, right? I'm going to like say this so they will do that, right? Instead of just honestly being like, hey, I would like you to do this, right? Or, hey, I have the ability to make these decisions and this is the way that we're going to do it. Right. Instead of trying to like, compliment sandwich or like, do whatever weird shit I was trying to do to get the behavior I wanted. And I think that honesty piece comes in too, when you're in mid-level management, right? Basically, and I would say when you're at any level of management, if you are not naming the problems with what's going on inside the agency, with what's going on like in the whole landscape, right? Like within your whole field, then people are not going to view you like as authentic.
Right.
They're going to be like, she's either lying to us, right? She's either lying and manipulating, or she's so entirely like checked out, like she doesn't even see like the writing that's on the wall. And so I think that's one thing too, is like my gut instinct, I think, which is yours often, is to like protect, right? And I think, well, maybe they don't notice what's going on and I don't want to alert them to it or alarm them or whatever. But of course they notice. Right. It's like when we say like kids don't notice what's happening. Like they always know what's happening. And how do you, create space for people to talk about like, wow, this is really crazy, and that's hard. I mean, that's hard. I mean, being a leader is just hard.
And you're kind of like, you've got your supervisor and you're the supervisor, and you've got you've got these people that you need to create product for, right? And then you've got these people that you're trying to manage and make sure that they are, supported and able to do their job,
right?
And then you're the person in the middle. So sometimes you've got information that you're like, I can't give all of this to my team, because like they don't really need it, and if I give it to them, it's just they're going to be worrying about something they have zero control over.
Sure.
Right? And I think that's another thing that I've learned more and more as I've kind of matured in my leadership roles, is that because initially when I first started supervising, I was always irritated when I didn't know just like literally everything that was going on, right?
Yes.
And not as a supervisor, but just as as a worker, right? Like as just a frontline worker. Like I was always irritated when I felt like people weren't telling me everything that was going on in the organization, all that. So I'm like, when I'm a supervisor, transparency, like I'm going to tell everybody everything, right? I'm going to get everybody's opinion when we make decisions. I'm going to, and quickly realize that does not work either. Because sometimes you need to make the decision as a supervisor. That's why you're the supervisor. Yeah. You can ask for feedback, but if you got a team of 15 people, everybody's going to tell you something different. And so then now you've created she sided with them and not with us.
Sure.
So what I've learned is that, when I can solicit for feedback, I do that. But there are other times where I just need to hold on to this information in order to make sure that I'm not laying a level of stress on my team that they don't need and they can't do anything about.
Absolutely. No, I'm with you on that. That I think that, there's space for feedback sometimes, right? And two, sometimes there's not space for feedback, but when you make a decision that is going to elicit some feelings or some frustration, I think you can be firm in saying, this is the decision that has been made.
Right.
Let me give space if anybody would like to share, what I mean, how they're feeling, apprehension, fear that they have about that.
Right.
Let me create a space. Not a space to persuade me to do something different, but because I want you to feel heard, right? Moving forward.
Yeah.
But I also think, and then there's sometimes, to your point, that there's just things that you do not need to worry your people with. But I think sometimes there are leaders that are like literally Rome is burning, right? And everybody's like, hey, it looks like Rome is burning. And you're like, I don't really see a fire.
Yeah.
Like, that's just a little smoke. Like, it's no big deal, right?
Nothing is happening.
Or they're like, the emperor has no clothes. And you're like, I wish the emperor had a few more clothes on, but like, there's like a little bit of clothes there,
Right.
So I think
that's enough.
That sometimes, as leaders, we want to try to like minimize it. And I think all that does is just like completely erodes trust. Because they're like, she's either bullshitting me,
right,
or she's like a fucking idiot, and because Rome is burning,
right,
So but no, and that's tough, and I think that's part of that learning by trial and error as a leader is like, because we're going to be hit with a lot of tough situations, and how do you navigate them and do that balance between like honesty, consensus building, but also like giving direction, protecting your people.
Yeah. And I think even like with the analogy of like, hey, Rome's burning over there, and and you've got some leaders that's like, no, I mean, that's not really what's happening. Like, look away. Quit coming behind the curtain. But I think that sometimes we can say, well, yes, there is a fire over there, and we have things lined up to take care of that fire. And you don't have to give all of the details around that. You can just say, like, we are aware, we have a plan, we are moving forward, and I will let you know the second that I can if you can help, or if this is going to impact you if the fire gets too close.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
I think that's how you say it. But you can't be like, oh, that's just a little bit of smoke.
No. And then that, you like you said, that creates that mistrust that, like, I can clearly see the fire. Like, what are you even talking about right now?
And you're like, oh, so, then you become like a gaslighter. And you're like, no. But yeah, I think that's a big one. And I do think that's, really so much of the art of leadership, because I do feel like it is an art form, is the balancing of that, right? It's like balancing the like, you are a human, let me honor like your unique skills, talents, and needs, right? But also let me figure out what that standard that is that I need to hold you accountable to, and let me do that in a kind and consistent and empathetic way. And let me also like make sure that we as a team like are integrating well and have a good understanding of what's going on in the whole agency, the whole office, the whole field, all of that stuff. And it's like a never ending balancing act.
Yeah. And I mean, hard conversations have to be, I mean, if you're going to be a leader, hard conversations are hard for everyone. Just because you get a bump in salary and a new title doesn't mean you're going to like automatically be able to go in and have a hard conversation effectively. You could potentially go in and have a hard conversation ineffectively and just go in and like scream at someone and make them cry. Early on in my career, those things had happened, and I think that when we're talking about holding people accountable to their work performance, if you've got someone who is doing a great job, like they have just an internal work ethic that is aligned with your organization, generally they do everything the way that they should be doing them, you don't have to have as many hard conversations.
No.
Because you can have a very easy conversation. Like if things are starting to turn a corner, first off, they're not going to turn real fast because this person generally does what they need to do. And that's a type of person who, when you give just like a little bit of critical feedback, they're going to be like, oh shit, let me fix this, right?
Right.
But then you have people who you have to have these hard conversations with on a regular basis because maybe their performance doesn't align with what you need within your organization. And it doesn't mean that we go in guns a-blazing or we create a naughty list and wait 6 months and then bring them into fire.
And let all of that resentment fester and all of that.
So you have to have those conversations, and you have to say, like, hey, I know all of these things that are going on, right? Like that you are, I know you as a person. I know what you are dealing with, whatever they've shared with you. And also, this is what the standard is. How can I help you meet that? What do you need? Are you having a hard time with time management? Are you having a hard time, creating priority lists? Are you, and starting off with like, what can I do to enhance your skills to be able to perform at the level we need you to perform in this organization?
Yes.
And kind of, you're getting on their side, right? You're like, and you always do. You just use the organization as this like weird anomaly, and we're like, the organization says we have to do this, right? And let me get on your side to help you do whatever it is that needs to be done, right?
Yeah.
And then sometimes you get to a place where you're like, we've been doing this for 6 months and we're not seeing a whole lot of change here. Is there something else that we need to be doing? And or is this the position that is good for you? Like, what would you like to be doing? Because it doesn't seem like this makes you happy. It's got to be stressful to come in here and talk to me all the time, and us to be constantly, trying to figure out how to enhance your performance. So what would you like to be doing? And I have many employees. I have walked them out the door like that by saying, what would you rather be doing? And they're like, I would rather be doing this. And I'm like, there are organizations that have that position available. Like,
let's apply there.
Yeah, I will write you a reference. Please don't wait until we get to a place where we're having to have a different conversation about like, this just isn't working and I'm having to write you up. Like, if you see the writing on the wall, I want you to be happy somewhere. At the end of the day, regardless of all of this organizational stuff that is happening, I see you as another human and I want you to have joy. So if this is not where it is, where is it? And can we move there in a way that is not chaotic? Like, don't wait for the chaos.
Right. Don't wait for the tower. Make the move. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I think the importance of, and this, it all boils down to that, whether it's like consistent meeting and those consistent and well-articulated expectations, right? Like, because then to your point, then the conversation is about the expectation.
Right.
It's not like you suck at your job. It's like, as we all know,
right,
the expectation for this role is that X, Y, and Z get done.
Right.
So to your point, so that is the problem. So let me come alongside you.
Right.
And let's work on solutions for that problem. But you're never going to be able, you can't set the stage for that kind of conversation if you don't have well-articulated expectations, whether that's in job descriptions, productivity standards, whether it's something you consistently say about your values, right? Or your mission. Like, you have to have that, not only like not well articulated in a weird employee handbook that nobody ever looks at,
right,
but like something that you are consistently saying over and over again, right? Like, we'll say things like, the expectation is that we reach out to our clients within 2 to 3 business days of them getting assigned, right? The expectation is that we'll give reports to our attorneys prior to every court date, right? These are the expectations,
right?
So that when I say to someone like, hey, these last couple weeks, you haven't been getting in touch with your clients for like 5 or 6 days, they know, shit, the expectation is 2 to 3, right? And it's not like, hey, you really suck at reaching out to your clients. It's like, hey. So I think that's the other piece, that communication piece and that consistency piece. The other thing that I wanted to mention too, and I heard this or read this or went to a training where they told us this, and this is something I think about a lot and I talk to my supervisees about a lot, is that when we are leaders, we are put kind of in this unique role of like getting the ability to like mentor and grow people. Like, that's the coolest part of the work we get to do. And we could probably do a whole nother topic on that because we've been jabbering for a while here. But what I learned and what I heard and what kind of research shows us and tells us to be true is that we often pick people to mentor and pour into who remind us of us. Whether if it's like a personality, whether it's a work style, whether it's, I think sometimes it can even be like demographic, right? It can be like, man, I was a young single mom that was busting my ass, and this person is a young single mom who's busting her ass, right? It can be like, for me, it was like, I went to UD, we had a lot of mutual friends, and this person goes to UD, right? There's some kind of like, we like to mentor and pour into people who are easy for us to connect to, that we have a lot in common with, which can be really unfair, right? And it kind of challenges us as leaders to say, like, why am I so excited about like helping this person, giving feedback to this person, giving this person opportunities for growth and not this person, right? It forces us to examine our own internal biases. It forces us to think, it basically challenges us to be better than who we are. And that's something that I think about a lot. There are going to always be employees that you just connect with better.
Right.
Because your personalities mesh.
Right.
But you have to make sure that you are giving, just as we give consistent critical feedback, we need to give consistent positive feedback, opportunity for growth and creativity for everybody too. And that's kind of been something that I've really been focused on and looking back consistently and being like, okay, Jill, like, who are you really pouring into? Who are you spending time with? Who, it seems like your communication is easier with this person than it is with this person.
Right.
What can we do to overcome kind of like that awkwardness, that weirdness, that stiltedness, and move on from there so that you're pouring into your people in a consistent way and giving everybody the opportunity for growth.
Yeah. And I like that you talked about, like, as the leader, I have to figure out how I'm going to connect with you. And I think sometimes you get leaders that are like, well, this person just isn't nice to me, or this person, whatever, and they put it on the other person. And I'm sorry, but that's not okay. You are in this elevated position. You are in this position to lead and to help mentor people. And because you're in this position, you flex to them.
Absolutely.
You flex,
you find a way to connect with them.
You build the skills you need in order to connect with them. The same way, because I always, when we do our leadership training, talk about it kind of as a parallel process. The same thing as like when I have a caseload of clients and I move to being a supervisor, now my supervisees are kind of like my clients.
Yes.
And I don't say that like in a in like a demeaning way or anything, but it's like, these are the people that I care for now. These are the people that are my responsibility now, right? And with our clients, you have to flex to whoever comes in the door.
What do we always say? Meet them where they're at.
Right.
Meet them where they're at.
And that means you have to develop the skills that you need in order to do that.
Yes.
And like you said, with whether somebody's supervisor or a client, there's some people you connect with very quickly and you're like, I got this. Like we're driving here and we're moving forward. And there's some people that there's more of a barrier. And I don't know. I mean, I won't say never, because I have heard people say it, that they're like, I don't know what to do with this client. They just don't, whatever. And they get real rigid in the way that they're going to interact. But we have to remember that. We have to remember, like, it is our job to flex to the people that we're supervising, not their job to figure out. Like when I talked about supervising up, sometimes we have to do that because our supervisors do not flex to the needs of the people they're supervising.
Yes, and we have to model that behavior. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, we are called as leaders to work a little harder. That's why we get paid more money, right? That's why we were given this responsibility. And I think the best leaders take that responsibility really seriously.
Yes.
And we are called to do what we need to do to connect with the people that we are charged with supporting, right? They talk a lot, I went to UD, which is a Catholic school, and they talk a lot about servant leadership, right? That like you are in service to the people. Like you have an obligation, not only to the people that you lead, but to the clients that they themselves serve. And that's a lot. Like it can be scary to think about.
Right.
I was having this conversation last night actually with a friend, and he and I were talking, and I said, man, it's just like, it's scary sometimes, like when I think about like all of this is like sitting on my shoulders, right? Like all of it, like all 350 clients that are open, and you know what I mean? In all their cases, like the buck really does end with me, and he's a business owner, and he's like, I know exactly, like, yes, like it, and that can be really scary to think about, but I think you flip that on its head and you say, like, what a gift, right?
How beautiful is it that I can impact this many people,
that I have this ability,
right?
And that's what you need, I think. And that at least is what gives me the motivation to rise to the occasion.
Right.
To say, like, Jesus, I do not, me and this employee just, like, don't. It's just fucking weird every time we talk and interact. But, like, I have to push through. Like, I have to figure it out for the benefit of, like, this beautiful little ecosystem.
Right.
That I get the privilege of leading. Yeah.
That then touches other people, and it just keeps growing and growing. And I often think about that with, whether it's, people that I've led, people that I've worked with, other people that have been in my life, and like how many people have I impacted, and hopefully how many people have I impacted in a positive way. And when I do things, when I make decisions, especially when I know it's on that larger level as a leader, I think about that now, because I'm like, I want to make sure that the way that I'm leaving this is positive for somebody else, that it's creating some learning, that it's creating some light for them, opposed to creating walls and creating fear and creating shame and having them kind of go, deeper into those spirals.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is. It's like, it's a great gift and it's a great responsibility.
Yep.
Whew.
That was a lot on
leadership.
Leadership. Do you want to be a leader? I don't know.
0 out of 10 would recommend. No, I'm just kidding. It's great. I mean, it's been it's been such a learning experience, but I'm so grateful for it. And that was Jill and Amber's rambling thoughts on leadership.
Yeah.
We might ask for some feedback for you guys. I'd be curious, like, if there's certain topics or ideas that people would want to delve deeper into. We can kind of smatter those in among different episodes and stuff. You want to pull a card?
Yeah.
Let's pull a card.
All right. Let's go tarot today.
Okay. Tarot all day.
Tarot today. I've been doing a lot of tarot this week.
I know you have been doing a lot.
All right. Let's all take a deep breath here together. And release. And set the intention that we are going to receive exactly what we need to receive at the end of this podcast for the highest good, and maybe for you as a leader.
Yes.
And shameless plug, we have we do have two leadership courses that are available online. They do have CEUs available with them. It's Supportive Leadership 101 and
Supportive Leadership 202.
I couldn't remember the numbers. And those are very, like most of our trainings are very applicable in that when you do the training, you'll have like action steps that you can actually like start applying with people that you're supervising immediately. We've got a toolkit in there on like forms that you can use to do supervision. So if you're somebody that's new to leadership and you're like, I just feel like I'm like underwater here, take a look at those, see if that's something that maybe you want to do. That might provide you a little bit of structure, a little bit of guidance around how to start moving forward with your team and building that good culture and those safe spaces with the people that you work with.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Amber said, they're available for purchase on the website. They're pre-recorded. And if you're an Ohio counselor, social worker, or marriage family therapist, you get CEUs for it. And we've gotten good feedback from it. It's also something that if you have a lot of leaders in your organization and you want us to do some individualized training, we do it that way as well.
Yeah.
But the card fell out of the deck. What do we got?
Oh, we got the Four of Swords.
Okay.
And the Four of Swords, I like to call that the self-care card. In my deck, and you'll be able to see it on our social media, but in my deck, it's a lady, she's kind of like curled up in this bird's nest, and there's like a little heart with a string that's kind of going around her. And how I see the Four of Swords showing up as we're talking about leadership is taking care of yourself and making sure that you're creating that nest space to take care of other people. And, with the swords, these are kind of more mind cards. These are cards about thinking and what's going on in your head. And so I also see it as mental health type of self-care.
Yep.
Where we are recognizing our own and then other people's feelings and emotions and things like that, and making sure that they have safe spaces to work on those.
Yeah. I like that. I like that analogy that we're like the builder of the nest or the keeper of the nest. Mm-hmm. That's nice. That's real snuggly. I like that. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Have a wonderful couple weeks, and we'll be back at you soon.
Bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of Guided by Third Wheel, the podcast. We would be honored if you would like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, be well.